Hi, my name is JW, and this time I'm going to do something slightly different. I am going to talk about a little bit about my progress, but I'm going to address a few questions. This was an idea of a viewer, and that still sounds odd to me talking about viewers and so forth. But a person who has viewed my videos contacted me on IRC because he also is a student of the course, and he asked me that, hey, I have a suggestion for your channel, and I was sure, please do ask. And his suggestion was, could you do a Q&A sort of episode? I know I haven't been doing any sort of, hey, please send me questions and that sort of stuff, so this isn't like a proper public Q&A, but I figured that I already have had quite a few different questions pop up in the comment section on YouTube. Unfortunately, I don't have any other place where I could correlate or collect all of these other questions that I have received over IRC. But I figured that at least going over these YouTube comments or questions that I've already answered in the comments would be perhaps worthwhile to revisit the questions and answers so that everyone can potentially reap some benefits of those. And I will also answer this specific viewers or students his own question that he had for me. These questions will be pretty much in random order, picked from my YouTube comments, and I will try to stay approximately in a cohesive state of mind. I will put the shortened answers on the blog post, but here are a little bit longer answers, maybe with a few examples thrown in between. So the first question I'm just going to look up because I have my notes there. So the first question is, hey, do you have any interesting links or a guide about pivoting or interesting recon tools to recommend? And the answer is, unfortunately, my answer is going to be pretty boring. Like, I'm not using any super secret, ultra modern, any sort of that tools. I'm just using the tools that are presented in the lab material and are basically de facto standard tools like Nmap or Enum for Linux. I did learn today about two other additional tools called Unicorn Scan, and apparently I've not used Unicorn Scan before, but apparently Unicorn Scan itself is better at the actual port scanning, and then this automated script by a former student called 1-2-Punch, I will link it. Basically it combines both. It will combine the Unicorn Scan's better port scanning ability, but then it will combine Nmap's scripting engine to actually get some information about those ports that Unicorn Scan found. So that's pretty interesting. I haven't used it yet. For pivoting, again, nothing super special. I've tried SSH shuttle or SS shuttle or however you want to pronounce that, proxy chains, and of course the Metasploit module Autoroute. But to be honest, I mostly do my pivoted scans directly from my Meterpreter's shell. I've not yet run across an instance where I couldn't do my pivoting directly from Metasploit, and I feel most comfortable there, and it's also the most likely place I will do pivoting in the future at my job site, probably. I mean, obviously Meterpreter is quite a bigger payload than just SSL port forwarding or something like that, but work with the best tools you got. So unless you've got limitations, don't impose them on yourself, unless you want to specifically learn about those limitations. This is quite a long one. It has a intro and then the actual question. I have one question. I've seen that the course has a variable cost depending on how much time one decides to rent, plus the fixed price of the exam that's around $60. I've also read that the cost to retake the exam is $60. My question is it possible to retake the exam, for instance, 2 months later, without renting lab time? And the answer is yes. Exam retake is possible and it doesn't require lab time. However, lab time will provide you with an exam retake. Depending on how you felt about your first attempt at the exam, whether it was just bad luck, bad circumstances, your internet broke, your computer broke, you had a migraine, you made mistakes, whatever. If you feel like you know you could have had it if the circumstances were a little different, then sure, go ahead with the $60 exam retake a week later. But if you feel like you really don't know what you were missing or were clearly struggling, then I would recommend just grab extra lab time, maybe immediately, maybe let it cool off a bit, whatever suits your personal needs. And then you will get the extra lab exam or the exam retake as part of that lab package. And as you know from my example, you are able to take a few months in between before you re-up your lab time. So you don't need to take 30 or 3 months of lab time if you're basically going to be away for the month in between. It might be cheaper for you to get 3 months even if you're not in the middle for the 1 month in the middle, but you don't have to. So whatever suits you. And this sort of ties into why did you take only 30 days and then another 30 days? For the initial 30 days, there was the initial queue. I tried to start basically, I signed up on like a Thursday or Friday, and I wanted to start that the following Sunday, but basically I had to start 3 weeks later because there was such a big demand on the course. If I had started that Sunday, I would have taken 60 days from the get-go. For this second lab, I could have taken 60 or 90 days, but the fact is, for myself personally, this does not apply to everyone. Any project I start which has a deadline, or which even if it doesn't have a deadline, will take 100% of the time I give it. If I take a project that I can accomplish in a month, but if I locate 2 months for that, it will take 2 months. It won't get probably any better. I mean, well, yeah, for OSCP I would probably get better because you're doing more practice, but in any other project I've done, I will take all the time that is allocated to me. So I just try to push myself and give myself shorter time spans with the option of, hey, it's okay to extend. Like I found that even if I give myself that option of, well, if you don't make it in the 30 days or whatever, then you can get another 30 days. But it's a mental threshold to actually go and purchase the other 30 days. So mentally, I'm just prepared that this is the 30 days and this is all the time I have, and I try to crunch it as best as possible. And this sort of goes, again, ties to what is your time management like? Or a similar question, how much time do you put in daily? For the first month, I put in 4 to 5 hours per day on a weekday, in addition to working 8 hours a day. And then the weekends, I put in 11 to 12 hours or something like that. For the second month, I would say my method of working has slightly changed. My on-keyboard time at the keyboard working on actual exploits, recon, enumeration, whatever, is normally 2 to 3 hours on weekdays. But in addition to that, I spend approximately 2 hours thinking about those problems. Meaning, I do something else. I play a game on my mobile, something that doesn't require any sort of skill, or which I can basically do on automation, like turn my head off from that game and just do it on like rote procedures, and that sort of allows my this sounds really weird. This sort of allows my higher cognition to disconnect and just start going over the problem I have, and that's how I've been able to come up with a few different solutions. It's sort of similar what I actually do in the shower. I'm a really taker of long showers, and that's because I think a lot in showers. I just love the water hitting me, and basically it just somehow unlocks my mind to run at full speed, and I've been able to come up with a few different really tricky solutions to work stuff, to school stuff, and to OSCP stuff while in the shower. And I especially like to take showers in the dark. I'm sorry if that's too much information. But yeah, approximately 2 to 3 hours on keyboard and then 2 hours thinking. And the weekends, I would say it's 8 hours on keyboard and a few hours thinking. Usually accompanied with a walk outside or something like that during lunch. Take a longer lunch and just think about the problems. Because I currently also have the tricky situation of I really crunched in my first month, and I was able to do away with most of the computers that for me are easy. So what's left are the medium difficulty computers and the hard ones. So it's sort of also clear that I cannot take the exact same approach to working with the easy machines as I would do with the medium to hard machines. And obviously, whatever is easy or hard to me might be different for you. I will come back to that in a moment. This is sort of not related to the previous questions. Do you need to know assembly language for the buffer overflows and so forth? Or also I've been asked, do you need to know programming? I would have to say the answer is no. You need to know how to Google. And for example, Google, site exploitdb.com, some software name and some version. Site exploitdb.com, Apache 1.0 exploit, enter, and go pwn machines. That's as far as you need to go. You need to be able to read code, so for loops, variables, all sorts of things. They need to be understandable. You are able to read code and understand what it does, and also potentially see if there's anything malicious happening. I would say that you should be able to trust whatever is in exploitdb, but if you ever stray away from that, if you go to any other place to look for exploits, you shouldn't have to. But if you do, then you should definitely be able to read code to know that it's not, for example, deleting your host Gullybox's root directory and removing all of your files. You should be able to read the code enough for that. But assembly, no. I mean, it helps to know what's a jump and what does ESP mean, or what's a no operation and so forth. But requirement, no. You will learn everything you need to know in the lab PDF. How to prep for the course. I mean, of course, this course has a reputation for being really difficult, and to me, it's also one of the most, if not the most, challenging things I've ever done in any sort of professional capacity. But it's also one of the most rewarding things I've also done. So, but it is hard. And for prep, I would say Metasploit Unleashed. It's publicly available as the website under offensive security. And I don't mean that you need to have Metasploitable VMs at your use and you need to be able to run through all of those exercises or whatever. Just reading through it and understanding what things are possible. Also, Vulnhubs. Vulnhub hosts VMs. I wouldn't say that you should go and attack every single VM there is, because most of them are designed to be puzzles, like CTFs, mini CTFs basically. And those are not realistic enterprise computers because they give you flags and hints and so forth as to where to go. And enterprise computers are more about configuration mistakes and trying to leverage those mistakes to get root or whatever. But what I can say is go read write-ups about CTFs or about Vulnhub VMs, because those can teach you how to think. And this is especially important because just today, one of the more well-known members of OffSec, Got Milk, published a post on the student forums. If you're not a student, you can't access it, sorry. But basically, it's a 3-page long forum post, basically a spoiler to one machine. It says so in the beginning, but it's a write-up about how he went about enumerating this machine and finally getting to root. And what's wonderful about it is that he explicitly thinks out loud. I did this thing like this because this could be potentially happening, or I want to avoid this. Then I used this tool with these switches in order to get this and this. Okay, it didn't give me anything. Let's go back to this. And he goes on, very meticulously, very well executed write-up about a single machine. And it really teaches you how to properly think. And that you can actually learn a bit from good Vulnhub write-ups or CTF write-ups. CTF, those are again usually quite a bit more tricky than actual machines I've seen in the labs. Other things to prep, maybe a little bit of bash scripting or PowerShell scripting or Visual Basic scripting or whatever is your host system that you're most familiar with. A little bit of scripting. It's not a requirement. It will just help you. And also understanding network basics, like understanding what's an IP address, what's a private IP address, what's a private subnet, what's a subnet, what does /24 mean, how DNS in general works. I'm not talking about what sort of UDP packets it sends. Like, what is its function? Why is it there? Just general concepts about how the internet works, how computers communicate with each other. Those are useful. What else? Basic debugging skills. Yeah. If you get an error message that warning implicit header of blah blah, or implicit function blah blah, or could not find library XYZ. Oh my god, what do I do? Well, you copy paste the error message to Google and see what's up. and then you can follow those links. You can follow what is potentially relative to your situation and try things. Not shut down and ask, hey guys, can you help me? I'm doing this. And if the first thing that they give you is basically the first thing on Google, and you say, okay, thanks, then I'm afraid you're an asshole. Sorry. You should be able to Google yourself, and if we are able to Google it for you and the first thing solves your problem, then your Google skills suck, or you didn't even try. And that's really frustrating. Because if we're putting effort, you should be putting effort. And by we, I mean anyone, any students, any alumni, whoever is on the IRC or forums. If we're putting effort to helping you, you should be putting effort to helping yourself. Next question. Do I need a fast internet connection for the labs? I would say anything above ISDN speeds is probably good enough. The more important factor is stability. How stable is your connection? Is there a lot of packet loss? Do you get disconnected often? Those are more important things than the speed. If you have a 1 megabit connection, you'll do fine. Some things might take longer, like uploading megabyte long exploits or downloading like few megabytes of loot, exfiltrating that from a server might take a few seconds longer. Nothing you should be worrying about. Having a 1010 or a 100 or a bloody gigabit connection will not give you any real advantage over the student that has 1 megabit connection. Not really. Like, we're talking about seconds in those short moments where you actually are moving data between your computer and a remote server. 90%, 99% of the time you will be either sitting on your screen looking at text flowing on your screen, or looking at text that has already been processed and is just stuck on your screen because this is the bottleneck. This here, not your internet connection, this here. Yeah, early when I was doing the Vuln hubs, I couldn't find this this password list. So someone asked me, have you found the dark code password list yet? And at the time I hadn't, but just recently I stumbled onto the seclists GitHub repo. I will link to it, and I found the dark code. Not that I have had to use it for anything yet. What kind of Linux distros you face at OSCP, I mean Ubuntu's or Debian's or CentOS? Yes. All the distros. Everything. It's very, very rainbow-esque. There's all sorts of Linux. There's all sorts of other things. You will have to come in and find out. But just everything can be found. And this is a little bit longer question. That was basically the question that started this whole thing, but I wanted to finish off with it. How has your CISP prepared for your OSCP at all? And if you don't know, I have been a CISP for 1.5 years now, and I know that CISP has gotten quite a lot of flack over the years, and I just believe that this is because it's both misunderstood and sort of mistreated. And I would say the blame lies mostly on incompetent HR departments. Incompetent HR departments who basically use it as if it was some sort of that this person actually knows something. I mean, the breadth of the course or the certification is quite vast, but the depth isn't. And I love how this fellow student, he's on Twitter on the handle Hi Meh, I will link it. He basically summed CISP beautifully. This correlates directly what I feel like. CISP means you know a little about a lot and can usually have a semi-intelligent conversation with different IT groups and understand risk from a business perspective. Doesn't mean that you are an IT security pro. Doesn't mean that you know jack shit about 0 days. Doesn't mean can audit your code. Doesn't mean any of those things. Those are personal. Those are not in any way required or implied in CISP. CISP is a generalist security certification. It's like elementary school for information security. It's like the bar exam for lawyers in the US. Like, must be this tall to ride, must have this to cooperate. Like, I know that's how it's been. I know a lot of people hate CISP, the certification, the organization, and like people who hold CISP. I don't know what I've done to you or whatever. People are different, but for me, it broadened my view of security. And I would say that CISP by itself, or my study to CISP, didn't prep me for OSCP. But CISP did open up work opportunities for me to do this sort of stuff, because our company was able to win bids because we had more certified people, basically. And that experience that I got from that did help. Mostly CISP taught me about things I did not know well before. Like, I knew something about biometrics, but I had never paid any attention to them. For physical security, for disaster recovery, for policies, business continuity, all these sorts of things I had been lacking majorly in, and I was able to fill those gaps because my knowledge in networking and software security was so strong that I didn't need to pay attention to those aspects of the CISP material that much. Because I have quite a vast experience in DevOps, even before it was called DevOps, basically running development and operations at the same time. So I was familiar with the subjects of how software can be exploited, how SQL injection works, what's a Smurf attack, and all of these things were familiar to me beforehand, even in more depth than is required in CISP, so I could just ignore them during my studies. But that DevOps background definitely helped a lot. And the last question is, what sort of support structure do you have, technical and social? Well, first I would have to mention that I have a very supportive wife who lets me basically sit on the computer and curse and cheer, because you also do that. You do a lot of cursing as a prerequisite to actually getting the computer, and then you scream your lungs out. So she lets me cheer to my heart's content, and even when I was taking my exam, which was a very grueling 24 hours, she made sure to kick my ass out of the door to take breaks and get some fresh air, which really helped. Also, on the social side, my company is currently paying for my certification because it has a direct tie-in to what I'm actually doing as a security consultant, and it also will help in the future win my company some tenders, because we can directly show that OSCP is a hands-on pen test certification, and hopefully in 3 weeks I will be CISP and OSCP, so I will be an easier asset to sell. That's something that people usually forget about certifications. It's not only about does this person know anything, it's also about what clients value. Clients currently are in a position where there's more people bidding, so there's more supply of talent than there's demand in public bidding, which means that the people who are organizing the tender, who have the project, they have the upper hand. So if you're able to give them two basically anonymous CVs, because those are just names, they don't mean anything, they're just papers. One of them has 3 certifications and the other one has 2. Then the person who has only 2 is potentially in a disadvantage depending on what sort of certification they have. And it's a very simple game of scales, like who tips the scales. And hopefully with my OSCP certification done in 3 weeks, hopefully I will be able to tip the scales in favor of our company in the future. Also in the social aspect, I have some peers, good IRC buddies and so forth in the tech and security industries with whom I can have a level playing field discussion of difficult and complex subjects that really helps when there's trouble understanding something or just exchanging interesting things. And that's it for the questions and answers. And this is already 30 minutes. Sorry for that. Small update. I was able to get the CTF machine. I was able to get Pain. I'm really happy about that. And also I was able to get one machine who I had been trying to get throughout my first month, but didn't get anywhere because I didn't have the proper procedures. 2 things I was supposed to mention these already in a previous thing. When you start enumerating any machine, make sure it's in an untouched, virgin-like state, i.e. revert that machine if you're in the labs. So no student has been able to mess with your results. Second, start slowly. When you start with Nmap, don't go full hog, T4 scan, all ports, all probes, because you could trigger defenses, or you could actually crash the system that you're probing. If you have a non-standard port hosting some service, and Nmap doesn't know what this is, it will send several different probes. But some services might just crash because you send them incorrect data that they're not expecting. So start off slow. Start with like top ports 100, for example. Don't specify the timing. Then start with, for example, all ports, but no version detection. Then once you have that information, then you may, for example, start doing version detection. And if you notice that after version detection, some ports are no longer responding, that might be a clue that there's something special there. Then again, you can just revert the machine and start with lighter probes. Thank you.